Hello, ladies, and welcome to another episode of the Autoimmune Rehab Podcast, where, as always, you can check out show notes, links, information about our guests, and more at autoimmunerehab.com. Today's episode, I have with me Holly Stokes, who is I believe she calls herself a hypnotherapist. She'll correct me if I'm wrong as far as what she actually calls herself. And Holly and I have actually known each other in real life for quite some time. So this is pretty exciting for us to be able to do. A lot of the guests that I have on here are people I've never really actually met. So, this is really
Oh,
great. So
wow.
Holly, come on and
Oh,
start off by telling us a little bit about yourself.
well, thank you, Anna Laura. It's great to be here and connect with you in this way. I was so excited to hear you have this podcast, especially this topic. Autoimmune is becoming a bigger challenge. More people are getting that diagnosis. So I'm really excited to share about that. So I've been practicing as a full-time neuro-linguistic programming practitioner, coach, and hypnotherapist for the last 17 years now. And some of what I'm going to share is what I learned through that journey, both working with myself and with clients, that we can really kind of decode what's going on in the background about health and illness conditions, and even come out with some amazing results. So I'm really excited to be here.
That's awesome. Cool. So to start off with, Holly, let's explain to the people listening to this exactly what hypnosis is, because I know a lot of people, when they hear that, they think the magician or the crazy person on stage knocking people out or making people engage in behaviors that they are not aware they're
Right,
engaging in. And I obviously know that that's not what it is or what it's really
right.
about, but I know that
Yeah.
sometimes some people don't.
Yeah, there's a lot of myths about hypnosis. So people often think of the stage shows, what we see on stage shows. Well, they're very entertaining. People eating an onion, thinking it's an apple, people blinking out or not remembering. What they see on stage shows, the hypnotist uses confusion patterns. So the hypnotist tries to confuse the mind to get the people to look to the hypnotist for direction. Hypnosis is actually a natural state of mind. We go in and out of states of hypnosis with different activities. So in the stage shows where people go into kind of that confusion, but then they become hyper focused on the hypnotist, and the hypnotist then takes them through different scenarios. So in kind of the therapeutic hypnosis, or the relaxation hypnosis that we do, we don't want the mind blanking out or not remembering. So we just use relaxation and focus techniques. But here's some examples of hypnotic trance that you might be going through throughout your day without being aware of it. So one very common is if you're driving down the freeway and you miss a freeway exit, your body was on autopilot, so you're still able to operate the car, but your mind was just checking out elsewhere, right? So we call that highway hypnosis. Or here's another example. If you've ever been reading a book and you are so into the story that you can actually start seeing the characters in your mind, you kind of see the background, and this story, even though you're reading it, it plays out almost like a movie in your mind. Well, that is another form of hypnosis. It's just, we say officially, the hypnosis is an altered state of consciousness where your subconscious mind becomes highly focused. And so basically what we're doing is just calming that busy beta mind to get to a very deeply relaxed state. And I like to think of it as that space right before you fall asleep where your brain is still able to think and reason. You still have logic, but the thoughts just feel really like soft and drifty. That's kind of that window where we can get conscious level patterns down to our automatic mind. So I like to call the unconscious mind the automatic mind. It's in charge of whatever's running automatically. Habits, patterns, we have habits in what we think, but we also have habits in what we feel. And stress patterns can be a big part of that too, but they're just running automatically. So we don't have to think about it every day. And so hypnosis is one of the tools that I use to get the conscious level information, the positive focuses, down into kind of that deeper automatic processing of your mind. And I like to say it's just giving your mind new things to focus on at the automatic level.
That's awesome. I love that. I had never really even thought of a lot of those scenarios that you described as actually being hypnosis, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's awesome. So what got you into the whole hypnosis field and wanting to actually do this as a profession and help people out in this way?
Yeah. So I had been working with at-risk wilderness therapy programs, so hiking the at-risk teens around in the woods till they promise to behave. But it really gave me an insight into why we do what we do is not just about our conscious logical mind. Like at the conscious level, we're logical adults. We know what we should do, but often there's other things going on, and these are those automatic patterns. So we had psychologists that would come out and interview the kids, and they would understand their patterns, but even though they knew what they were supposed to change, they still really struggled to make themselves change it. So like confidence, for example, little Johnny needs to work on confidence and really believing in himself. But then as counselors through the week, we were like helping kids with their psychology homework. And they still really struggled against these patterns, even though logically we knew what they were, right? And so that really led me to, that fascination led me to finish my degree in psychology. So I was attending Portland State University, and I remember one of the classes at the time that I was taking, the teacher was talking about the placebo effect, and they were showing this documentary. And we've known, like our scientific world has known about the placebo effect for hundreds of years. We've known about this in various circles, but it became officially part of how we measure the effectiveness of medication. That now our medications, I think this has been since like the 1940s or 50s, that we have created double-blind studies because we know the power of the mind to create effects if we just believe that we're getting a medication rather than a sugar pill. So this is the placebo effect, that if we're taking a sugar pill, no medical, no medical effect, but our mind has the ability to create results even because we think about it. So this is why we've developed double-blind studies. And this has been part of our scientific understanding about how these things work. But we kind of dismiss it in our culture, like, oh, that's just the placebo effect. But wait, the mind is actually doing something. And even like sometimes people discount it. Oh, it's like a trick of the brain. Well, it depends. There are actually cases, amazing cases, where people, they studied this in some of these documentaries, that doctors were doing surgeries on the knee. And one group was the placebo group. So they had no medical intervention. But with the other group, they wanted to test out like which part of this process of knee surgery was the most important. And what they found is the people in the placebo group that had no physical intervention actually recovered and showed results just as well as the people who went through the actual surgery. They even followed up with them 2 years later. Anyway, so we're watching this documentary on the placebo effect, and one of the last, segments of this video was a man undergoing brain surgery using no anesthesia, only hypnosis. And I was like, wait, what is this? And so after the movie was over, I raised my hand, what's going on there? And the teacher says, oh, well, that's hypnosis. Mostly in psychology world, we think people are playing along. But I'm like, wait, we actually saw someone undergoing surgery without anesthesia, only hypnosis, and he's talking calmly to the doctors as they're operating on his brain. So I was fascinated. I found she's, when I talked to her, she's like, well, you got to do your own research. And so I did. I looked up a local school, found there's a lot of research now going on with the National Institute of Health and other places that are really diving into these questions. What is the potential of the mind to help the body heal? And how can we actually harness that and utilize that in a really effective way? Anyway, so actually seeing that documentary, I searched a local school, found they were teaching both NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, and hypnosis, and I was hooked. That was it. I was it's kind of like the gateway drug, right? That was it for me. And
That's
I've been in
awesome.
the field, yeah, and
Yeah.
I've been in the field ever since.
That's awesome. Yeah, speaking of the whole surgery and hypnosis thing, I was actually doing a one-on-one with the lady who's a life coach that I met at a virtual networking event actually, which is last week. I was talking to her, and she said that her mom actually had a hysterectomy with using hypnosis because she's allergic to a
Oh,
lot of the drugs, and so the surgeon
yeah.
actually couldn't give her those
Wow.
drugs, and so that
Right.
she had a hypnotherapy, professional come in and put her under hypnosis to give her surgery, and it
Wow.
worked.
That's
She was
amazing.
able
Yeah.
to actually have the surgery with that, and I'm sure it requires, an expertise from the hypnotherapy professional doing it. Not all people who do
Yes.
hypnotherapy necessarily know how to do that, but
Right.
just
Right.
shows that it can be done. And
Power, yeah. Power
yeah,
that's possible. I think it's largely untapped. That this is really the new frontier. We've understood medicine at so many levels with kind of that, Western medical model of reductionist thinking, but we haven't really asked questions about the potential of the mind. We haven't been asking those questions.
hmm
So I think that's what we're going to see in the next 10, 20 years ahead is really expanding this area of knowledge and the last frontier.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think so, because I think people are sick and tired of drugs and the side effects and all of the things that come along with it, and they don't want to do that anymore. They want to find other options, things for
Yeah.
their natural healing, that kind of thing. And from my own personal experience, even though, I know a decent amount about hypnosis, but I'm definitely not a professional in it. When I had knee surgery last year, I was
Mm.
like, I did not want to do those drugs. They
Mm.
make you loopy, they're terrible for you, you can get addicted, all kinds of stuff. And I didn't do it. I made
Mm-hmm.
it all the way through with I got knocked out with anesthesia, but when I came home, I didn't take any prescription drugs to recover, and I
Wow.
just used some essential oils and holistic supplements and a lot of meditation, and to some degree putting myself under some kind of hypnosis to help myself, especially those
Right.
first few days when I really hurt. I just
Right.
use the power of the mind, like you say, to say, look, I can get over this, and I don't need these addictive drugs. And I
Right.
talk to a lot of people and I tell them about it, and they're like, oh no, that I couldn't do that, I'm too big of a wimp. And I say, well, actually you could. It
Yeah.
starts with your mind and your attitude, and if you really are convinced that those things are not good for your health, you can do all kinds of things. So,
Yeah.
you know
Yeah. Yeah. What is possible when we put the mind to work for us rather than running the default patterns that we have now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, transitioning over a little bit to autoimmune, I know that we share in common that we've both had Hashimoto's. Talk to me a little bit about how you used hypnosis with your
Yeah.
Hashimoto's and what
Well,
that looked like.
I actually had a different flavor of it, of
Oh, okay.
autoimmune. I had systemic lupus.
Oh, okay.
I was diagnosed in 2006. I had noticed, bruises and like inexplainable rash. It's the
Mm-hmm.
autoimmune where it's attacking like skin and organs. And it took me a long time to kind of unravel it. But along the way, I really figured out, like when we think of the unconscious mind, sometimes we think of it as a singular thing, as kind of this, grand thing, but or it even gets a bad reputation. Our unconscious mind, that's where those core issues about sabotage or uh, negative things that we would probably attribute that we feel like are not in control, like addiction or something like that. But think of the unconscious mind more as like a jar with many marbles. And so as we get into doing our inner work, we might clean up a couple of marbles and along the way be like, well, why am I not feeling better? Why am I not doing well? Well, because you probably have a few thousand marbles. And if we clean up some of the layers, but there's still kind of the gunk in the jar, that is what is going to get filtered into our energy systems, or it's going to create the blocks in the energy system. So that's kind of like an expanded understanding. I like to use the image of an iceberg, to represent kind of these layers of the mind. So if you imagine an iceberg, there's the top part above the water, and that top part of the mind is kind of represents our conscious mind. Is a much smaller portion, but that's where we're logical and rational. We know the healthy foods to eat, the foods to avoid, but then it's the 90% of the iceberg below the surface that we don't see. And it's that 90% that's actually running that iceberg. So even though we start making updates and changes, and yes, like nutrition and changing diet and getting regular sleep and exercise helped, but only to a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
So what I found in diving into those layers is usually the parts of our mind that are interfering with the results we're trying to create in life, they're trying to do something for us, but their instructions, whatever our mind is running automatically, are either outdated, or our mind just hasn't been updated to who we are now and what's important for us now. So there can be a lot of, like, I like to use the kind of the image of a tangled ball of yarns for any health issue that we have, whether it's autoimmune or whether it's things like, irritable bowel syndrome or whatever it is. It's kind of like a tangled ball of yarns that at the unconscious level, there's all these underlying unconscious habits, patterns, programs that create this increased stress response and that cause our energy systems to kind of go out of alignment and kind of go a little bit wonky. Or even at that unconscious level, some of these patterns are actually fighting against ourselves. And that's, of course, the metaphor of autoimmune, where the immune system has a heightened response, or I call it an overreaction, and then it starts affecting different systems of the body.
Yep. Oh, that's great. That's awesome. So what did that process look like for you? Did you engage in hypnosis on yourself to be able to help with your healing, or did you have to hire
Yeah.
somebody else to assist you, or how did that work for you?
Both along the way. So from my own story, and actually I'm in the process of finishing my book. It's called The Miracle Code: Overcoming Autoimmune. It's a working title, so we'll see how it
It
how
turns
it
out.
how it gets finished. But it's in process, about 80% done. But I kind of share through this my story of identifying and unraveling what I found, both working with myself, these layers of the mind, but then also in working with some of my colleagues to really identify what are these parts of the mind that we need to care for or update or redirect, so that the whole system can come back into alignment with health and well-being. And so, and that puzzle can be very different, one person from another, even though they might have the same diagnosis. The underlying patterns of autoimmune actually operate the same way. So we can recognize, the Western medical model, they tend to classify the disorder by the symptom. So if
Mm-hmm.
you have, where your autoimmune is attacking skin, it's lupus. If it's attacking thyroid, Hashimoto's. If it's attacking your bowel system, it's Crohn's disease. There's like 100+ autoimmune things, but the underlying patterns, as we look at the unconscious mind, it's that's running it, and it usually has its reasons. And so that's where hypnosis, meditation, we can start diving into those layers and get the mind to start shifting its focus. What is it running at the automatic level? What does it need to know, think, or feel to do differently, so that we can start building up our health, vitality, and baseline of well-being?
That's awesome. I love that. And especially since when you think about it, it's not a mystery to most people, and most people that are listening to this have already discovered for themselves that our Western healthcare system really sucks, quite frankly, when it comes to fixing autoimmune conditions. In
Yeah.
fact, not only do they suck at fixing it, they pretty much suck at even trying to figure out what's even going on with you to begin with.
Yeah. Well, and on one hand, I have to really thank Western medicine. It did save my life more than one time. But on the other hand, like you said, there really aren't good answers, because if you don't know the cause, you can't know the solution, right?
Absolutely.
And I remember being prescribed a pill. Here, this is the best we can do at the time. It will likely give you cancer in 10 years, but at least you're okay for now.
Yeah. What?
So
Yeah.
so yeah, let's get better resources out there. Let's get better, even just like this is something, even though we know like stress is a huge factor. Now there's
Mm-hmm.
the stress in day-to-day world around us, but most of the stress people are experiencing actually come from within their own brain.
Mm-hmm.
What is our mind saying about ourselves? What is our mind saying about our job? How is it doing worry patterns? These are some of those habits, patterns. They're kind of wired in at that unconscious level, and that can continue to perpetuate these health issues and symptoms that we have. So it really has been a process for me, and untangling those layers. Plus, there's like the whole spiritual side that often, not to spend a lot of time on this, but often with our health issues, there's sometimes a higher purpose, something that our soul is wanting to learn or grow through,
Mm-hmm.
that we can overcome. And so, like paying attention to these multiple factors and layers.
Absolutely, yeah. And I've actually even heard some other people say that if you reach a certain point in your healing, sometimes you will feel like the autoimmune condition you had was actually a blessing because
Mm,
it made you aware of a lot of other things that were going on in your life and has put you in a position to be able to help a lot of other people because you've been
yeah.
through that.
And it's great when you can come to that level rather
Yeah.
than, why is my body doing this? Because I've been there too. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think well, I mean, it's even a lot of Western medicine is starting to come out now and say that stress is a number one cause of a lot of
mm,
people's health issues. I think they've even said for years and years that more people have heart attacks on a Monday or end up in
yeah.
the ER in accidents on Mondays than
And
any other day of the week
yeah,
because they're stressed out over their work and their career and other
yeah,
things associated with, they come back from a weekend and then Monday hits and they can't handle it.
right, right. And their mind's like, nope, I'd rather be in the hospital. Well, basically, it just gets to a place where it's overwhelming, especially when
Good.
those stress patterns get, yeah, it can just get to a place where it's overwhelming. And then the system kind of shuts down in some way.
Cool. Awesome. Well, the book sounds
Yeah.
amazing. When you have it published,
Thank
we'll have to
you.
go back through and edit the show notes to include the link to it. So those of you that are interested in it, you'll have to stay tuned. And so a couple other things before we wrap up. So one thing, if somebody's listening to this and they probably just gotten their autoimmune diagnosis, or maybe they've had it for a while, but they're really struggling, what would be the first step that you would recommend that somebody should take to especially if they want to consider incorporating something like hypnosis into their part of their healing journey?
Yeah. You can go to my website, thebraintrainerllc.com, and /free healing. On that link, you'll get 16 key principles of self-healing download. And it'll put you into my email system that we can connect that way, and you can ask more specific questions.
That's awesome. That's great. And for anybody else that's listening to this, I have been through a couple of her trainings and listened to some of her meditations, and they really are awesome. So I definitely highly recommend you check it out. And anything else you want to share with anybody?
This is fabulous. I just really appreciate you're getting the word out there for people that there's alternatives that they can do to kind of take charge, because it can be so confusing, and overwhelming, to have this diagnosis and feel like you're all kind of on your own with it. And just keep in mind that, if one thing doesn't work at one time, we'll try another route or try another route. And like, if I were to say, if there were just one skill that people could walk away with that they could start employing now, meditation. That is a
Good
great
one.
window where you can start developing that inner calm, get your mind, and that's the gateway of hypnosis. It's actually that calm, inner, quiet mind is the place where we take people with hypnosis. So hypnosis, meditation are very similar, but it's a great skill you can have the rest of your life.
Awesome. That's great. Okay, so let's get busy meditating, everybody. And like I said, we'll have Holly's link, thebraintrainerllc.com, in the show notes, so you can go check that out, go grab the freebie, connect with her, and start learning about hypnosis can help you on your autoimmune healing journey.
Thank you so much. This was
Yep.
wonderful.